Distinguished Madam Minister Gojković, Your Royal Highness Crown Prince Karađorđević, respected audience and participants. My name is Vanja Kovačev and I wish everybody a warm welcome from rainy Belgrade, capital of Serbia. Today, the Serbian Ministry for Culture and Information, in cooperation with publishing company Color Media Communications and Magazine Diplomacy and Commerce, host another online conference named Cultural Diplomacy, Royal Families and Palaces. We are very happy to have the opening speeches today by Madam Maja Gojković, Minister of Culture and Information of the Republic of Serbia, and His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar Karađorđević. Let me tell you a little bit about today. We have planned to have two rounds of presentations and talks. First being called Royal Families, Bridges Between Nations and Cultures, and the second part we planned to call Royal Palaces and Residences, places of history, culture, and future connections. The purpose of this conference is to share different international experiences on the role of royal families and royal palaces in cultural diplomacy, and to, if it's possible, gather and share best practices from abroad, in order to advise and guide a small country like Serbia how to use its cultural and historical heritage, Serbian royal families, palaces, and villas as tools for more successful cultural diplomacy. Speakers today are representatives from different European countries, but also India, royal heritage experts, historians, art historians, and professionals that know, believe me, a lot about royal families as well as royal palaces, which are today's very successful museums. Today's guests will speak about the role of the royal families in the world and their places to live, their palaces in the cultural diplomacy activities as a form of international communication, as well as respect for and recognition of cultural diversity and heritage. We are online today also because of the pandemic, and this online conference is held via Zoom, but also broadcasted via YouTube of Color Media Communications, the organizer of many conferences since, I think, 2015. The organizer is the idea generator and the owner of Color Press Group, Robert Čoban, well-known Serbian journalist, a big cosmopolitan spiritus movens and influencer, strongly committed to heritage protection issues in Serbia and in Europe, and of course, his team. I use this opportunity also to thank Mrs. Ivana Reinac for the excellent preparation of this conference, Mr. Vukan Stojanović and Mr. Damir Radinović-Lukić for the technical support today. Ms. Reinac has been very successful to gather here many distinguished guests from different European but also Indian royal museums that were once royal palaces. Some of them from different time zones also, some of them historians, some art historians. You will agree after and during the conference that this is an amazing group of people. I will just present them in the order of their appearance, so to say. I have with me today Mr. Erald Kapri, advisor of the royal family, a journalist and historian himself. He is the author of a famous book, King Zog Behind Closed Doors. He will be talking to me live from Tirana in Albania. Another gentleman, Klaus Panholzer, he is the director of Schönbrunn Group, and the lady, Elfriede Iby, she is the head of scientific department of the Schönbrunn Group from Vienna, from Austria. A special guest from India who will be joining also live. His name is Karni Singh Yasu, and he is a director of a museum trust in India. You will meet him later on. Also together with me, I have a little bit later, Tamara Ognjević. She is a director of Artist Center. She is also the vice president of the Nj.K.V Icon Serbia. At the end of today's conference, we will have two people joining us from Italy. A gentleman called Andrea Merlotti. He is director of the research center of the Savoy Court from Turin in Italy. And Mrs. Elena Alliaudi, she is coordinator of something very, very interesting. It is called Network of European Royal Residences. To go directly to the conference, let's call our guests of honor. Now it's my great pleasure to announce the opening speech by Madam Minister Maja Gojković from the Ministry of Culture and Information of the Republic of Serbia. Madam Minister Gojković, please welcome.
Vaše visočanstvo, vaše uvažene ekscelencije, dame i gospodo, zaista mi je veliko zadovoljstvo što mogu da vam se obratim na otvaranju konferencije Kulturna diplomatija kraljevske porodice i palate, koja ima za cilj da osvetli više značajnih tema iz oblasti kulture. Današnja konferencija je podeljena u dva panela. Prvi je posvećen ulozi koju kraljevske porodice imaju u savremenom svetu, kao svojevrsnim mostovima između nacije i kulture. Drugi panel ima za temu kraljevske palate i rezidencije kao mesta istorije, kulture i budućih povezivanja i integracija. U zemljama koje su monarhije, ali i u državama koje su to nekada bile, a njihove kraljevske porodice dalje zauzimaju važnu društvenu ulogu, velika pažnja posvećuje se pitanju ovog kulturnog nasleđa i njegovog afirmisanja kao kulturne baštine čitavog čovečanstva. Meka moć države, čiji najbitniji deo je kulturna diplomatija, u današnjem svetu važnije je nego što je to bilo u periodima kada se položaj jedne zemlje na međunarodnom planu zasnivao uglavnom na vojnoj nadmoći. Kraljevske porodice su po tradiciji isprepletanosti rođačkih veza među dvorovima različitih država povezane mnogo direktnije i neposrednije nego većina nas izabranih predstavnika, političara ili diplomata. Članovi kraljevskih porodica širom sveta danas su promoteri kulture i spajanja među narodima i društvima. Njihovi predstavnici bave se humanitarnim aktivnostima, rade na očuvanju kulture i tradicije, brinu o održavanju dvorova i crkava i ostale kulturne baštine. Dame i gospodo, naša zemlja ima bogato kulturno nasleđe, čiji važan deo su tvorci, imanja i umetničke kolekcije koji su nekada pripadali kraljevskim porodicama. Na primjeru Srbije, iz grada koje su pripadale dvema kraljevskim porodicama može se sagledati koliko međusobna povezanost istorije, kulture i turizma znači za prepoznatljivost i vidljivost u međunarodnim okvirima. Setimo se samo koliko je značajnu ulogu u rešavanju krize između francuskih monarha 62. i 63. godine imala princeza Grace Kelly i njena ofanziva šarma, kako su to nazivali svetski mediji. O tome koliko važno za imidž Velike Britanije u svetu ima njena kraljevska porodica ne treba ni govoriti. Tome smo bili svedoci nedavno kada je jedan tužan događaj smrt princa Filipa danima bila vez broj 1 u svim svetskim medijima. S druge strane, nekadašnje kraljevske palate poput Versaja u Francuskoj ili Schönbrunna u Austriji u normalnim okolnostima godišnje privlače milione posetilaca i imaju značajnu ulogu u promociji kulture tih država. Primera radi, 2019. godine Versa je posetilo 10 miliona turista, a Schönbrunn 8 miliona. Većina njih posetili druge muzeje i odredište kulture i time učestvovalo u razvoju turističke industrije ovih zemalja. Dame i gospodo, Srbija je u protekla 2 veka imala 2 dinastije, Obrenoviće i Karađorđeviće, koje su mnogo uticale na razvoj države, ali razvoj i kulture. Dovoljno je samo podsjetiti se, na primjer, uloge kneza Pavla u napređenju rada Narodnog muzeja i kupovini slika za njegovu kolekciju. Verujem da naša zemlja na polju afirmacije dinastičkog nasleđa ima još dosta prostora za napredak i da postoji potencijal koji tek treba da zablista punim sjajem. Značaj ove konferencije između ostalog je što ćemo na jednom mestu imati priliku da od predstavnika kraljevskih porodica, fondacija i palata iz celog sveta, od Brazila preko Italije, Austrije i Albanije do Indije, čujemo raznovrsne i bogate iskustva koje će svima pomoći da povećaju svoje znanje u temama kojima će se baviti i da to primene u praksi. Zaostavštine kraljevskih porodica širom sveta simboli su svoga vremena, naroda i kulture, te dobar alat za promociju zemalja koje to blago posede. Na nama je da to blago koje imamo pažljivo čuvamo i da deljeći ga među sobom zajedno uživamo onome što su nam prethodne generacije ostavili. Hvala.
Gratitude for the organization of this conference and for the kind participation and the opening speech by Madam Minister Maja Gojković. Our second guest of honor is His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar Karađorđević, Your Royal Highness, welcome.
Vaša ekscelencijo, dame i gospodo, molim vas oprostite što ću govoriti na engleskom, da bi učesnici konferencije razumeli. Hvala vam. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have the opportunity to virtually greet you today and open this conference dedicated to royal palaces and royal families. I would like to thank Minister Maja Gojković, the Ministry of Culture and Information of the Republic of Serbia, and Mr. Robert Choban from Color Media Communications for organizing this conference. It will show the benefits of the royal families and their roles in society. Many see royal families as living in a fairy tale, but the truth is, role is to work endlessly to help and unite the people and devote ourselves to the country. At every part of their life, whether they live at home or abroad, royal family members represent their country and the people's culture. To give you a little background of my life, by the twist of fate and the tide of history, I was born in exile and declared an enemy of the state when I was 2 years old. Although my father and I longed to be in our home, I set foot on the soil of my country for the first time at the age of 46 in 1991. To help the people bring democracy, I returned to live in Serbia with my family in 2001, when democracy returned. Returning to the country was a major event in my life. Finally, my wife, Crown Princess Catherine, and our children were at home, in a house privately built with the great love and dedication of my grandfather, King Alexander I, for his family. It was with great pride that I bear the name of my grandfather, King Alexander, the great knightly king, and continue to pursue the goals of my family to bring prosperity, unity, peace to my country. During the time of communism, the royal compound was closed for visitors for over 60 years and hidden from the public eye. I immediately repaired and rejuvenated the royal compound, using all the private funds I had to open it to tourists and to my people. It was very important for me to allow pensioners and children to come to visit without any charge. I wanted as many people as possible to see the beauty of the Royal Palace and White Palace, located within the compound, as well as the Royal Chapel of St. Andrew I Cole, the patron saint of the Karađorđević family, and the beautiful park that surrounds the buildings. Many believe there is only one palace on the compound, but there are two palaces. People feel free here and special. They have the impression that they set sail into the past, that they have thought to have traveled through time and returned to the era of kings and monarchies. My wife and I, when we are not outside of the country promoting Serbia, do our best to greet the tourists who visit the compound, tell them very interesting stories, and about the beauty of the people and the country. To see the smile on their faces and how impressed they are gives me great pride. We do not want to change or rewrite history. There are still symbols of communism at the royal compound which I do not want to remove, because they are part of our Serbian history, but the people need to know the truth and the facts that were unknown. When speaking about the culture and tourism, one must remember that historical injustices must be resolved. My family has suffered a great injustice since 1941. We've had not returned any personal and private assets that were bought by my personal funds of my grandfather and my father. I started a project to collect archives from around the world to reveal the history that many have been hidden for many years. It is unfortunate that many of the archives were stolen during World War II, and so the truth could not be seen. Unfortunately, until today, historical injustices towards my family is not resolved. Under the veil of culture, human rights are being annulled. Although this historical injustice exists, my wife and I continue to support the country, the people, and tourism, and we're proud of many important events we have. In order to promote Serbia and the people, we believe that these events bring additional tourism to the country, because when someone comes, they continue to come again and again. I'm very proud of my wife and her humanitarian foundation, with offices in Belgrade, Chicago, New York, Toronto, Athens, and London, that for many years has been helping everyone, regardless of religion or ethnic origin. We're proud of Christmas and Easter receptions that we prepare every year for over 600 children without parental care, with disabilities, children with special needs, who, thanks to the music, entertainment, program, gifts, and the fact that they are the phallus, feel they're part of the great fairy tale. My wife would be very pleased if you could help our country to see all the humanitarian work and get all the details. Please visit website www.lifeline.org. Continuing the tradition of my ancestors, following the examples of my grandfather, King Alexander I, and my grandmother, Queen Maria, I established the Foundation for Education and Culture with a desire to provide additional support to young people. We've been blessed to receive many scholarships for our students. We would welcome even more every year. For over 18 years, the White Palace traditionally becomes the home of 600 best high school students at the receptions in their honor when we reward them for their academic accomplishments. We organize many other receptions here and events such as Ladies' Lunch on the occasion of Women's Day, 8th of March, also the annual dinner for His Holiness the Patriarch and bishops, as well as events organized by our friends and partners. Also, I remember warmly in 2005 when my wife organized my 60th birthday. Kings and queens came, and so did the whole Serbian government and our friends from all over the world. To further educate the historical periods and personalities as well, and as to the great Serbian artists and their work, I also regularly organize many exhibitions at the palaces. To continue to build foreign relations, as did my ancestors, it has been a great pleasure for me to host many world statesmen, presidents, ministers, and members of royal families at the Royal Palace since I've lived here. You will often hear that royal families are interconnected in some way, either as relatives or as friends. My wife is Greek, but that is not only my connection with Greece. My mother, Queen Alexandra, was the daughter of Greek King Alexander and Princess Aspasia of Greece and Denmark. So my connection with these two royal families is completely clear. Also, my paternal grandmother, Queen Maria, was a Romanian princess. Sadly, regarding the recent passing of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, my wife and I have very fond memories with him and Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth II is my godmother, and also my maternal great-grandfather and grandfather of Duke Edinburgh were brothers. And the grandson King Alexander of King Alexander of Yugoslavia, and King Alexander of Greece, and the son of King Peter II, I have also many other connections with royal families worldwide. I must say that my wife and I have many relatives and friends in the royal families around the world. And it is especially always a great pleasure for us to host them at the royal palaces in Belgrade, but also to be their guests. I was particularly touched when my cousin, Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, came to be with us when he was on a state visit to Serbia. I was able to show him our culture, but he was not the only one who had several European royal families staying and visiting us at the Royal Palace. We had the following royal families: Sweden, Norway, Spain, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Monaco, Bulgaria, France, Jordan, and many more. Promoting our history and culture of our country is extremely important. More work needs to be done to further this cause, and I look forward to implementing them, which is why the events such as these are very important. From my ancestors Karađorđević to me, there is continuity of the service to the people and the state. Being the head of the royal family, the honor of serving the people and the state is an undeniable duty. Organization and responsibility come from the people, and the fact faithfully obliges us. Once again, thank you for inviting me to open this conference. I believe that for both participants and spectators, the conference will be interesting and will bring some new perspectives on the royal families and their roles in the modern world. We welcome all of you to come and visit the royal compound and experience the beauty of Serbia and its people. And to my countrymen, I would like to say, hvala svima i nadam se da ćemo se uskoro vidjeti na dvoru. Hvala lepo. Hvala svima.
On behalf of the organizers, I use this opportunity to thank His Royal Highness Crown Prince Karađorđević for honoring us with his speech and the opening of today's event. Before we start today's program, the talks and presentations, if you agree, let's watch a video about the beauties of Royal Palace in Dedinje. The Royal Palace in Dedinje was built in the period between 1924 and 1929 with personal funds and by the order of His Royal Highness King Aleksandar I, grandfather of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar II. The Royal Court was a home of King Alexander I and King Peter II. Today, it is the home of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar II and his family. Let's look at the video. Enjoy. Dear audience and everybody watching this conference, I'm sure that you have enjoyed and you see how wonderful this both interior and exterior is. It's in the heart of city of Belgrade. I wish that many more visit this space. Of course, perhaps you have noticed this background picture behind me is also one of the photos that I found on the webpage of the royal family, Karađorđević. As Crown Prince himself said, visit the webpage, look at the activities. I'm sure you will find interesting both historical and cultural details that might interest you and your family. I personally believe that we can learn a lot more about our history, at least in these digital times, by visiting the webpage of our royal family. So we hope you have enjoyed. The previous video told us a lot about what we have in our country. And in order to start with our international guests, we need to learn more, I think, about our own heritage. We will continue, of course, as promised. Our first guest is Mr. Erald Kapri. He is, as I told before, advisor to the royal family in Albania. He's a journalist and historian. He's the author of the famous King Zog's book called King Zog Behind Closed Doors, and he will be talking to me and you from Tirana in Albania. Mr. Erald, if you agree, before we start, let's watch an interesting video from Albania, okay?
Okay.
Royal Villa of Durrës. The Royal Villa of Durrës, commonly known as Zog's Villa of Durrës, is a historical building in the city of Durrës, Albania. It served as the summer residence of King Zog. It was used as the summer palace by the Albanian royal family during the reign of the monarchy and still remains a symbol of the monarchy in the city. It was restored to Lejka Crown Prince of Albania in 2007. The restoration process was accepted and approved by the Albanian Lands Commission, following all the legal procedures without contest. The palace was a gift given by the Durrës business community as a sign of prosperity to King Zog. Although in 2012, the villa is set on the Durrës Hill, 98 meters above the sea level. The sea can be seen from 3 sides of the villa. It is extended in the form of an eagle and was built in 1926. Cristo Sottiri, an architect who had graduated from the University of Padova and the University of Venice, Italy, designed the villa. By the time that Sottiri was designing the building, he had vast experience that included that of being the architect of the court of Queen Elizabeth of Wied of Romania. The building was finished in 1937, a few months before King Zog married Queen Geraldine upon the aid to Nj.K.V. The villa was used after World War II as a government reception building. During Communist Albania, many communist leaders from Nikita Khrushchev to the Cambodian Prince Sam Norodom-Sihanouk have been guests in the building. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter also has been one of its guests in the 90s. The interior of the villa was vandalized during the 1997 unrest in Albania. Prince Lejka has outlined a reconstruction plan to be implemented in the near future.
You took us to the sunny coast of Albania. Good morning, Mr. Kapri. Could you turn on your microphone? Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome to the conference. How are you feeling this morning? It's rainy in Belgrade.
Oh, yeah. Here in Albania, the weather is sunny weather, so we are okay today.
Excellent. In the previous speeches, can you hear us? Because I think your internet is a little bit unstable.
Yes, I can hear very well. Yeah.
Yes, we saw in the previous presentations
I can hear you, yeah.
speeches by the Minister Maja Gojković and our Crown Prince Aleksandar Karađorđević about the story behind a royal family in Serbia. You and I have a common friend, Mr. Robert Choban, who knows a lot about this story that you are going to tell us. So please share with the audience of today's conference the little short story, if possible, about how it went in Albania.
Yes, Albania royal family and legacy has so much in common with almost the royal families in the Balkans. the royal Albanian family exiled the country in the 1939 when the Italian fascists invaded the country before the World War II, just a couple of months before, and they just they came back to Albania in 2003, almost more than 60 years abroad. They came after the Albanian parliament did an official invitation to come back, and they prepared and voted a law to give a special status to Albanian royal family in Albania. But this status was only for the protocol reason. And when it comes to lots of the properties and lots of belongings to the royal family in Albania, that was to be part of negotiation that have to come ongoing. But anyway, mostly of the royal properties and villas and palaces now are part of Prince Leka and his royal family in Tirana. But still we have some issues with that, and when the royal family is all the time with negotiation with Albanian state and government in order to find the best way how to use the royal heritage for the public. Okay, for example, when it comes to the main Albanian royal palace, which is today is called Presidential Palace in Albania, it is used only main for visiting state actors and only for the special reason, and is mainly close to the public. And this is a magnificent palace built with Italian architects in the late 30s, and then was finished by Italians in the 40s. It has all the furniture inside. It has a personal chapel, lots of gardening, a masterpiece, really a masterpiece. But it's a shame how that is closed for the main public. So you need a special permission to go to visit the palace. Anyway, the royal family has done so much to find even funds to restore many aspects of the palace because it needed so much. For example, the private chapel, the Catholic chapel in the garden of the palace has been restored now, which is a miracle. And now we have a good news that in the near future, the government will accept a plan to open the palace for the public. So it will be like a main museum, so people who can see the history of this palace, which has very interesting history because it was built for the king, and no kings slept in the palace. So it was since the 1939. It was mainly used for some governmental issues, but never was used as a royal palace. Anyway, still it is a problem in the ownership because the palace was built in the private land of the king, former King Zog. But anyway, this is a part of Albanian history and need to be respected like that. So we hope that Albanian government will stay to the plan to open the palace for the public, because it is that will be a great joy for the royal legacy in Albania. But it's not only that. Royal families living in a royal residence, which is in the center of the city, a former villa, which was built in the 1930s. And Prince Leka decided that he wanted to open the royal complex to show to the people what he has collected and what he has to say for the all the especially for royal legacy in Albania. The Crown Prince Leka has some of marvelous collections, since like documents, personal belonging. He has a magnificent collection of arms because his father was a very big fan of arms. But also lots of private belongings, which are very important, especially for the 20th century in Albanian history. You showed in a video of a royal villa in Durrës, which is magnificent, but the villa still needs lots of funds to restore. It needs lots of money. Prince Leka has also another villa, which is located to Lake of Shkodra in north, but that needs also a lot of money to be restored. So when it comes to Albania, mostly of the legacy, when it comes to the palaces, needs still to be shown to the public. Capital Albania was built during the 20s and 30s by former King Zog. So Tirana was decided to be capital because King Zog wanted to do it. And the main center of the city was built by King Zog with the help of Italians. And it is for that Tirana has that style of Italians and futurists, especially new fascist design that was so much famous in the 30s by very famous Italian architects. So when it comes to the legacy of royal family in Albania, it's still a long time debate. That is also because the former communism regime did so much propaganda against the royal family, and still you need a lot of time to educate the Albanian public for the beneficial and also for the importance of royal legacy in Albania. King Zog has so much legacy in Albania when it comes to political and state buildings importance, and that is much more important to the royal Albanian family to educate and to work with many actors of Albanian society to show as much as possible for the royal legacy and the importance of it. So in the near future, the Albanian royal family will have big plans. One of them will be facilitate with the government to open the big royal palace in Tirana, built in the most beautiful hill of Tirana. And the second one is to open the complex which Prince Leka is living now, and to show to Albanian public of his collections and lots of belongings that he has. Many of those you can see in royal family website, but that will have so much for the Albanian public. When it comes to the other issues, such will be the restoring of villas, such in Durrës and especially in Shkodra. That is difficult since they are private owned by Prince Leka, but in the same time they are considered as a treasure by Minister of Culture in Albania, first category. You need to have a long discussion and negotiation to find the funds and well use them to have some situation on this. So anyway, we have high hopes that day by day we are trying to build lots of bridges to show more and more to Albanian society about royal legacy in Albania. And when it comes to the palaces especially, that is something that you can see very well and to understand how important it is for today. But even especially for the foreign tourists, which are very interested about the royal history in our country. And we hope that by the next year, maybe when this pandemic situation to finish, to have much good news when it comes that Albanian royal palace to be open for the public and the tourists. Why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Erald. How long have you been working? How many years of your life have you dedicated to study the history of royal family of Albania?
Well, I did a biography of King Zog, especially for his wartime Second World War, because he has been in UK mostly and had some plans to return to be the communist in the country, but he didn't at the end. But yes, now I'm preparing another book history about the role of royal family in 20th century in Albania. Yes, I mean, I've started to work for many years for to write and to study about the Albanian royal family since from the beginnings. I mean, King Zog, former King Zog in Albania, it is considered the most most important political figure in Albanian history, in 20th century history. He is the founder of a modern Albanian state. So, but because of the war and because he left the country in the 1939, there are a mixed feeling about his legacy when it comes to that. But anyway, I mean, I say that because it has been half of century communism and misinformation about royal family in Albania, we need still work to do in order to educate the people about the good role of royal family in Albanian history.
Do you think that cultural diplomacy as a tool is a very, very powerful one that can lobby for the country's good image worldwide? Do you think that we should all, maybe in Balkan, invest a little bit more in the cultural diplomacy and our royal families as our representatives abroad? Like ambassadors?
Mm-hmm. I believe that. Let me give you an example. When Prince Leka married Royal Highness Princess Elia in 2016. Mostly of the members of royal family of European families came in his wedding, like former Queen of Spain, Duke of Kent, cousin of Queen Elizabeth of United Kingdom, and lots of royal members of European families, and was a big news in Albania. And that helped it so much for that, even to show the country. And mostly of the European press and worldwide media wrote about this royal wedding. So that was great for the image of the country. On the other hand, lots of royal families, members from European countries, when we visit Albania, they always try to visit the Albanian royal family. And that is so much interesting about the news story. And I mean, we have a royal family at least, and that is interesting to know for Albania. We are a small country, we know that, and the fact that we have a royal history, I mean, it's so much interesting to know it and to learn it. That how is possible that that was before and now is republic? What happened? Before the communism, etc., etc. I mean, yes. I mean, when it comes to the image, truly now everyone accepts it. Even Albanian prime minister, even Albanian president, they recognize the role of Prince, Albanian Prince, and the royal family, and their contribution for growing Albanian image abroad. And that is very, very good news. I mean, really good news.
Yes, I remember colleagues of mine from Color Media Communications. We were organizers of part of the royal tour when Prince Charles and Camilla were in Serbia, and it was an amazing event. For the first time in my life, professional life, and I'm 47. I don't know how old you are. I was able to experience that kind of protocol event. The Color Media Communications was a host of Camilla's visit to Sremski Karlovci, where she visited a winery, and a group of women who were doing some handcraft products. It was an amazing experience, and it gave me, as a citizen of this country, a feeling that we, I mean, sure, we belong to the world, but this gave me like an insight that we also belong to the group of royal families. So when you think about the people in Albania, how do they feel about this, and what are the communication channels you think you should work more on to get to more people in order to boost this feeling that royal family is something important for the citizens?
I agree totally with you. Even in Albania, we had some such visits from Prince of Monaco or member of different royal families, and it was not just a big news, but was something interesting to know. I mean, with the royal families means that you are part of European history. It means that there is a legacy that you need to respect it, especially for the lots of families or for conservative perspective, that this is something very important, that you not just to protect it, but also to elaborate it and to advocate it more in the society. And that is very, very important. And nowadays in Europe, the royal families have totally different role. They mostly work in growing the prestige of their societies and their countries. So they are very dedicated to this. And the fact that mostly of, even in our country, in the Balkans, royal families work on that, is very something to appreciate a lot. And Albanian royal family is working in this perspective. They have very good relationship with Albanian state, even because of the law they have a protocol status for that. But this is something that at the end the society gets a feeling which is something not just romantic, but it's something that people need to be appreciated, and this is something very important. I mean,
nothing wrong with romance in this story.
Yeah. Sure.
Maybe some lady target group would be more interested if there are some stories which are told in a different way. But thank you so much, and warm regards to you in Tirana, sunny Tirana. We need to use just for a second. There is no need for PCR test to enter Albania right now from citizens from Serbia?
No, it's free, so you can come anytime you want.
And the sea is okay, it's warm, nice and sunny, and soon we can visit the palace, yes? Soon.
It's perfect, believe me. So if you want to visit, just write to me and we can arrange something.
Last but not the least, where can people find out about information about royal palaces in Albania? What's the webpage?
The Albanian royal family. You can find easily in Google, and have a very nice website with in Albanian and English also, and with information about also for the palaces, information about the cultural diplomacy of royal family and everything you want, history and anything else.
And since Hello Magazine is one of the magazines within the Colored Press Group, I'm sure we will be reading in Hello Magazine about the little daughter of Prince Leka, which was recently born. So at least those magazines are following the royal family events, and I think this helps the visibility of the current events in the royal families. Erald, where can we buy your book online? Where can we buy your book?
My book has been published just 1.5 years ago, and it was considered the best book of the year in Albania in 2019. And now it has been translating in English, and will be ready in 2-3 months in Amazon. So we need to wait some. It's only in Albanian for now.
Thank you for everything you shared with us on our today's conference. Stay well, and we will talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
From Albania, we move to Austria, to Vienna, to greet another interesting team of professionals in our today's topic, namely Mr. Klaus Panholzer. He is director of Schönbrunn Group, and a lady called Elfriede Iby. She is head of scientific department of the same Schönbrunn Group. Let's hear what they have to say today on our conference.
I'm head of the scientific department of the Schönbrunn Group and chief curator of all our sites. We are now here. Hello, I'm Elfriede Iby. I'm head of the scientific department of the Schönbrunn Group and chief curator of all our sites. We are now here in Schönbrunn Palace in the big gallery, which is one of the most representative rooms of Schönbrunn.
Welcome. My name is Klaus Bannholzer and I'm the CEO of the Schönbrunn Group. I'm very happy to welcome you here today. The Schönbrunn Palace is not the only site we operate. As the Schönbrunn Group, we also operate the Furniture Museum in the city, the Sissi Museum in the Hofburg, and the Schlosshof Estates in the parts of Lower Austria. We as the Schönbrunn Group, before COVID, welcomed more than 5 million visitors. We are the #1 tourist attraction of Austria and also one of the biggest in Europe. We are also a World Heritage Site, UNESCO World Heritage Site, and also our aim is to protect our imperial heritage. We also belong to the ARE, the European Royal Residences, where our partners are like Versailles or the Tower of London. We have a very good relationship with them and we work always very close together. Very proud we also that we not just have our beautiful palace here, we also have a lot of things around the palace. If you want to come here with your families during the day, you can spend the whole day here. You can go in one of our restaurants, the typical Viennese style you can experience, or you can in the evening go to our Schönbrunn concerts, or you can even go to our neighbor with your family and visit our Schönbrunn Zoo. We also hope after COVID that this will be the same thing again. We are very well trained that we can handle a lot of tourists. We are very well trained that we protect our imperial heritage. We are actually the most important and most valuable cultural side of Austria. And of course, we're very proud of this.
Schönbrunn has a long history and covers more or less that what we call now the world of Habsburg. It was bought by Maximilian II around 500 years ago, and 300 years ago it was planned and constructed by the famous architecture Fischer von Erlach as hunting lodge, to be remodeled as summer residence for Maria Theresa and her family. And it was then focused as a place of politics, a place of diplomatic, and also a place of arts and culture on the Viennese court. And the palace offered at the same time small cabinets for confidential meetings and diplomacy acts, as well as a space for big receptions to demonstrate the power of Maria Theresa and also successful alliances which were made. Besides this, Schönbrunn offers something very unique in European palaces. It was also a place for family representation. So the Emperor Maria Theresa and her husband, with all of the many children, performed more or less for a big audience of diplomatic ambassadors, also kings, and there happened a lot of very representative events. Also in less successful political times, Schönbrunn was focused, so for example, from Napoleon, who accommodated his troops and himself in the imperial apartments. He knew about the importance of the place, the USP, and so he took advantage to make his troops exercising in the Cour d'honneur, and Viennese people came to participate and to watch Napoleon and to find the way how his personality and also his success was based on. 100 years later, from the time of Maria Theresa, Franz Joseph has also chosen Schönbrunn as his permanent residence, where he lived most of his life, sometimes together with his beautiful and famous wife, Empress Elizabeth called Sissi. When the Habsburg sites were overtaken by the new Republic of Austria, the government itself also used Schönbrunn as a place for official representative events. So the magnificent dinner was taking place after signing the Austrian State Treaty, and in 1962 there was the meeting of John F. Kennedy with Nikita Khrushchev, also here in the big gallery. Since then, Schönbrunn Palace was used for international tourism, and became one of the most frequented monuments of Austria.
Hopefully, after COVID, it will be the same again. We will be aiming that we will have again the #1 tourist site of Austria. We cannot wait to have you all here, to welcome you here in our beautiful palace. And this is a great invitation for you. Looking forward to have you here. Thank you.
You're all able to enjoy this video showcasing the magnificent Schönbrunn Palace. In order to get the real picture and more beautiful pictures about what they were saying in their presentation, I suggest going back to the magical Vienna virtually once more. We are sure that you will enjoy.
Human history bears the traces of man's quest for immortality and the desire to make his works last for eternity. The cultural gems of the Habsburg monarchy, preserved with devotion and a love for detail, take you on an unforgettable journey into Austria's glamorous past. Schönbrunn Palace, the former summer residence of the Habsburg monarchs, is now the vibrant heartpiece of Austrian history. The sumptuous interior of the imperial apartments, including the Millions Room and the Hall of Ceremonies, bears witness to the splendor of a glorious past. The palace opens out into a spacious Baroque garden with ornamental flower beds, the great parterre, and the Neptune fountain in the middle, offering a magnificent view of the Gloriette on Schönbrunn Hill. The Privy Garden, with its fragrant citrus trees, and the mystical maze are the perfect setting for a gentle stroll. At the Children's Museum, visitors can slip into the roles of their favorite royals and discover the daily life at court. The Panorama train provides a leisurely tour around the spacious park with its manifold attractions. The Vienna Furniture Museum, originally founded by Maria Theresa.
I'm fine, actually excellent, because it's spring is coming and we hopefully are going to exit these dark ages of pandemic. As you know, Serbia is very successful in the vaccination process, so hopefully lives will be back to normal very soon. Tell us, for a country like Serbia to be compared with India and with the historical heritage, it's like comparing an elephant with a mosquito. But this is why we called you today. This is why we want to learn as much as we can from your experience. Tell us about the fund and the museum and the trust that you are in charge of, and tell us about the amazing prizes that your work has brought to India. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you so much, and it's lovely participating in this conference. Let me just very quickly give you a sort of a context of India and the royal families today. So India was under a colonial rule till 1947, and became independent after 500 plus royal families signed what was called the Instrument of Accession, and India became a democratic country. So India has a very strong legacy of royal past. And just at the turn of India becoming independent, all these royal families lost their privileges and partially their titles, and were only allowed to retain some part of their property, and the rest was nationalized. So in many ways, after India became independent in 1947, the royal families had to reinvent their role. They became private citizens, inheriting some part of their cultural wealth, but really without active support of the state. So which meant a very challenging time for the Indian royal families. Many, after India's independence, turned into active politics. Many turned entrepreneurs, and many had to lead a very challenging life. Now, with that context, let me come to Jodhpur. Jodhpur is situated in the present-day state of Rajasthan, which is in Western India. It is the second largest city of Rajasthan. I represent a trust which runs the 15th century castle of Jodhpur. The castle was the original residence of the royal family. The royal family in end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, moved out of the historic castle and into a modern palace. The present Maharaja, His Highness Maja Gojković, lost his father at a very young age, at age 3, and was sent to a boarding in England. He went to Eton and then to Oxford, and then finally returns back to India in 70s. In 70s, India is a very different country. We are already a democratic republic in 40s. 70s, we are experimenting with some aspects of socialism. Royalty is a bad word. And so he comes in these very challenging times, and he's posed with this scenario where he has to take care of the heritage that he has inherited, which is broadly forts, castles, and palaces. So he, what I often call him as a cultural entrepreneur. He sees merit in investing in culture and heritage. So he invests in the castle to be turned into a private trust, which would operate a museum. So my museum has been running since 1974, and today receives pre-COVID more than 1 million visitors. The historic spaces of the castles are gallery spaces displaying the rich heritage of the royal family. The royal family continued to stay in 1940s Art Deco inspired one of the largest residences in the world called Umid Bhawan Palace, which is turned into a heritage hotel. So in India, there are two models that the royal families adapted. Was to turn some of their palaces into museums and some into heritage hotels. And that is broadly how the royal family structured their businesses. And in Rajasthan especially, the heritage tourism, which includes heritage hotels, which are former palaces, and museums within palaces are a very successful model.
Excuse me, I'm here. So, is it expensive to organize this kind of like facility, which is in dimensions very big? Which is is it costly to keep it operating?
Yes, I mean, like the trust that I represent and the castle that I represent is spread in 26 acres. These are large estates and spaces. So in terms of conservation, upkeep, maintenance, staff, it's a big ticket budget.
Is it also used, as it was mentioned previously, from the Austrian experience for the diplomatic meetings on the high level?
Yeah, historically, of course. I mean, it was. I mean, royal families. One of the themes that we are exploring, and within Indian context also, the Indian royal families represent sort of a very active role in diplomacy. So, and they negotiated several foreign powers historically, whether it was from Central Asia or the colonial rule, for the welfare of their people. So historically, both fort and palaces were spaces where the British royal family, members of the British royal family, or the viceroys were invited and hosted. Post-independence, again, head of states as cultural monuments, they've been active places where both in modern palaces they have stayed, and as a museum been visited.
How many visitors do you have per year, approximately, before, of course, these extraordinary pandemic conditions?
Little over 1 million.
How much do you know about Serbian royal family? Did you ever have time to explore this?
Yeah, I mean, while sort of reading about the conference and also sort of being a student of history, very sort of briefly and not a very detailed, I would say, understanding of the Serbian royal structure, but yes.
Is it popular to study art history in India? Do you have great successors? Do you have some students who follow your path?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say, to be very honest, art history is an underdeveloped subject in India, in spite of the fact that there is a great need for art historians and cultural managers and conservators. But I would say it is a developing subject. There are more and more young people who are getting interested. So I would say the next decade will see a lot more younger people opting for the cultural studies.
Mr. Karni, as everybody says these days or last 2 or 3 years, the future is digital. Is royal family and the palaces that you speak about, the museum that you speak about, the trust that you speak about, are you digital?
Yes, I mean our museum is digital, and we are very active on social media. In fact, I was just speaking today to my colleagues, because we are, as you must have read in the news or heard, that we are in a very strong second wave of COVID, and this is our second week into lockdown. I'm just discussing with my colleagues a lecture series, with our collections in mind. So yes, I mean, these are changing times, and new realities are facing us. So we need to adapt and sort of present content to our audience in a very different way.
Yes, because recently, if I'm not mistaken, in February, Madam Minister of Culture and Information and other professionals in that field has helped to finally develop in the final phase and to launch something called e-museum in Serbia. This was a long-term project, even before the pandemic conditions, but those people participating in that conference told us how important it is to try to, bring the culture and the heritage closer to the younger generations who are just, on their mobile phones. This is the only medium they understand. So during the pandemic, for example, there are various museums in Serbia, which is a small country, organized different digital contests, digital platforms. They organize some competitions in digital forms just to keep the people and families and children active in some way, if it's possible. Is there something like that maybe in India, like e-museum platform?
Yeah, several individual museums are presenting their content online in a digital way, in different ways. There are several museums who have virtual tours of the gallery. Several museums are working with younger generations. And so, for instance, again, I've been talking to my team here that our schools are going for summer vacation, and there would be restricted movement for children. The children would be mostly home because the next few months in India are going to be very difficult, and people will not be able to move freely. So we are talking about creating content for children who are going to be home, because I think the parents would be tired of exposing them just to the regular entertainment content, but they would be also, I think, keen to look for content that is enriching and engaging. So like us, I think several museums are working for the summer break for creating content for children, which would make it more exciting, more engaging than the usual entertainment that is available online, and sort of, expose the younger minds to more creative ways of engaging with the arts.
Maybe one of the last questions, any advice to Serbia, how to maybe be more successful in reaching to international community for funding in order to restore and revitalize the royal palace in Belgrade. I have visited it, and I have been, like many Belgraders, on parties and CSR activity events organized by the royal family. It needs freshening up. As you heard also in Albania, the main problem is funding. You have great contacts within the international community. Your fund and yourself have received many prizes. Tell us about those prizes, and tell us, if it's possible, a little bit, how we can be more successful in reaching out to the international community.
Yes, so the foundation is a recipient of UNESCO award for adaptive reuse, and also another UNESCO award for conservation. And these both projects were partially in collaboration with institutions like the Getty Foundation. I think Getty Foundation is a good source for you to apply for. They have international grants program. And similarly, through World Monuments Fund, that is another important mechanism for international sites to attract funding. And of course, your own stakeholders within the countries. CSR is becoming popular in India too, and a lot of private companies now are mandated to keep some funds for the cultural sector. So I think a combination, a strategy which is both international and local should work for Serbia.
Thank you so much for joining today. We will now move from India, and you are, of course, more than welcome to stay and listen to our colleagues speaking. We would switch to a professional like yourself. His name is Uroš Parezanović. Uroš, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you for joining us from the beginning of the conference. You have heard the experiences from Austria, and from India, and from Albania. For our international guests now, and for everybody in Serbia, could you share what you work with, and what are the plans for future? You can, of course, revert a little bit to how it was before in regards to the royal palace. Of
course, first I would like to express my gratitude to the Minister of Culture of the Republic of Serbia and Color Media Communication for organizing this panel. And for me, it is truly a great honor and a privilege to be part of it and to speak as representative of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar, who is the head of the Karađorđević royal family. I would also like to say hello to all the participants and all the people who are listening and who will listen to what we have to say. First, regarding the royal complex. The royal complex is in Belgrade, which includes two palaces, the royal and the white one. I am repeating this because most of the people only in Serbia and in Serbia mostly refer to it as the White Palace, but there are two palaces. The royal complex is very significant for the image of Serbia and of our people in international community. It is a place where many gatherings of important people occur. And it is not only a place where people get acquainted with the history of our country, but where, thanks to the enormous efforts of Crown Prince Aleksandar and Crown Princess Catherine, a lot of work for the future of Serbia and the well-being of our nation is being done as well. And that fact that their Royal Highnesses are here and that they are organizing and supporting all these gatherings in their home is what makes it so special. Their Highnesses have numerous contacts worldwide, and they are using these contacts, these connections to promote our country and to bring important people to Serbia. I must say that many investors came to Serbia after they met and spoke with their Royal Highnesses in the Royal Palace and had a chance to hear their opinion and finally to actually see for themselves how great our country is and what business potential lies here. And at the same time, when they are not in Serbia, Crown Prince and Crown Princess are continuing their activities. I will give you just a few examples of this. For example, the owner of IKEA was a guest of their Highnesses in the Royal Palace, and as we know, this company is now working in Serbia. Also, on the other part of their activities, they were supported by Steve Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple Corporation, in their humanitarian work. So, as can be seen, Crown Prince Aleksandar and Crown Princess Catherine very well know how big the potential the people of Serbia have, and they are working 12 to 14 hours a day, if you believe me or not, to make it possible for that potential to be achieved. Now, when we are speaking about the royal compound and its significance, I must make a short historical reference, speaking about the background of this beautiful complex. The Royal Palace was built between 1924 and 1929 by the wish of His Majesty King Alexander I, who was the grandfather of Crown Prince Aleksandar. He wished to make a home for his family. The other palace that is located on the compound, then that is the White Palace, was built from 1934 to 1937 by the wish of King Alexander that his three sons, and these are King Peter II, who was the father of Crown Prince Alexander, and his brothers Princes Tomislav and Andrei, have their own private accommodation when they become of age. What is really important to emphasize is the fact that the estate was purchased and the construction of palaces was financed with King Alexander's private funds, for which he paid taxes to the state as he did for all other of his properties. And this is something that all the citizens of Kingdom Yugoslavia did at the time, and something that we all citizens of Serbia do at these now present times. He also equipped the compound and the palaces, filling them with movable items, including furniture and many artworks, making it a warm family place for him and his family. What people in Serbia also usually don't know is that King Alexander was also a great fan of art. He was not only a warrior, as most people see him. And at the time when Royal Palace was finished, it became a place where many important events and meetings regarding the history of not only Kingdom of Yugoslavia, but also of the entire Europe and the world took place. King Alexander was a leader of great vision, who managed even to bring together and build bridges between those nations that were traditionally considered themselves as enemies. What people usually don't know, and what could be interesting for them to hear, is that at the time, among many others, king's guests at the Royal Palace were Japanese Prince Takamatsu, who was the brother of the Emperor of Japan at the time, but also Miss Helen Keller, American writer and human rights activist. One of the last high state officials who was welcomed by King Alexander I at the Royal Palace was Louis Barthou, Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, which occurred in June 1934. I'm mentioning Mr. Barthou because these two men, him and King Alexander, met, and both were killed on that tragic and horrible day in October same year in Marseille. King Alexander fell as a victim of extreme ideologies that saw him as an obstacle for their monstrosity plans they had. And these ideologies are, of course, Nazism and fascism. When World War II started, King Peter was, like our entire nation and entire Europe, a target of Nazis' rage, and he was, together with the royal government, evacuated from the country, which was the case of many other European royals. After the war, communists came to power in Yugoslavia, and they removed citizenship and, without any legal basis, confiscated the entire property of the royal family. Ancestors of Crown Prince Alexander worked really hard to build up the country and to provide to the people. And what is really tragic is the fact that even today, more than 75 years later, the royal complex has not yet been returned to the family, including all other assets. The consequences of and I must apologize if it is a very strong word, but a brutal theft that occurred in the past are still present and ongoing. Since the Karađorđević family was a victim of slanders and bad propaganda, which was started by communists, 4 years ago, Crown Prince Alexander started a project in researching history, gathering archive data from all over the world in order to remove the veil of lies that was covering our nation's history. And even before that, before communists started manipulating with the truth in a way they did, during the World War II, Yugoslavian archives were destroyed and taken away by occupying forces, which practically was stripping away history from the Serbian people. And the main purpose of this research that Crown Prince started is that Serbian people deserve to know the real truth about its own past. And I'm happy to announce that soon we will start releasing the documents and showing how rich our culture and history are. But regardless of the fact that the injustice towards royal family are still present, their Royal Highnesses, Crown Prince Alexander and Crown Princess Catherine are constantly making efforts to promote Serbia, and they have made a great difference with both their humanitarian work and lobbying. And all the events they are organizing in their home, although it is still taken away from them, are intended to help Serbia and its people. Crown Prince, in his opening speech of this conference, already spoke about some of them, and I would also like to mention the International Cuisine Dinner, which is a very interesting event, when all the ambassadors of the foreign countries gather in the White Palace to represent their culture. We can say that on that evening, the Royal Complex becomes a place where the entire globe is present and where diplomats from all around the world have a chance to gather, to talk and to exchange their opinions. But what...
Can I ask you, sorry to interrupt you, what do you think is attractive for younger generations and teenagers? Why do I ask this? I know that members of royal Swedish family were here, Carl Gustaf and Princess Silvia, and I know that by this experience I saw that their Swedish nation has stronger relation to their royal couple than we have here. What do you think, like, how can you reach to younger people? What are the means the court communication means the royal court is using, like Facebook? There are like 100,000 people following His Royal Highness on Facebook. Do you also have information about that, like communication towards the common people?
Yes, of course.
How is it working?
I mean, we are in the 21st century when social media represent practically anything, everything. Sorry.
If it didn't happen on Facebook, it didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen again. And Crown Prince Alexander has, as you mentioned, his Facebook page and also an Instagram page. And you may not believe it or not, but he is also the one who is checking these posts, and we have a team. And we have a team of people who are trying to respond to every comment, to respond to the messages we receive. But also, besides the social media part, we are also receiving a lot of emails and a lot of traditional letters that
Of course, I believe that His Royal Highness is reading those posts, because being a communication expert, everybody can feel if the message is done by a PR agency, or if the message or the answer communication is done by the
real person. Yeah.
myself. So it's always good to be honest and to have this human contact with those who follow you, if it's on Facebook or emails. It's this sincere communication which is really important. So continue where you stopped. I just want to ask you how we as a media company can contribute to like better visibility and in future, of course, a larger number of visitors to the Royal Palace, which is beautiful. I'm so proud of my picture behind me. I wish I could spend more time in this garden myself.
Of course, and it is really a beautiful complex. And don't apologize yourself for interrupting me, because you practically made an introduction to the next part of what I would like to say. Because we are now coming to the regular people, because we must not forget that nowadays the promotion of a country is not only being done and conducted through high-level diplomacy by state officials, diplomatic corps members and businessmen. What makes a great impact is also what we call a mouth-to-mouth promotion that is being done by regular people. One of the first things Crown Prince did when he came back to live in Serbia 20 years ago, after decades of exile, was to open Royal Compound for the people. Tourists from Serbia and abroad now have a chance to visit this magnificent place and to take a tour through our history and to live see that beautiful photo that is behind you. Crown Prince's wish is that people who come here feel like they have walked into a different time, time of kings and queens, time of our glorious past that we Serbs are most very proud of. And according to feedback that we get back from the visitors, when they go back to their communities, they speak to their families and their friends about the Royal Compound and its beauty and engage them to come and visit as well. We can proudly say that thousands and thousands of visitors came through the gates of Royal Complex each year. And of course, now at the state of pandemics, things are different, but we all hope that soon this awful pandemic will end and that we will come back to a regular state.
And you were, sorry, again, you were so lucky to have this web page like royalfamily.org. How great is that?
Yeah, of course.
It was the first thing that you. It's not complicated at all. The address itself, it's very easy.
Very easy to follow.
What did you say? How many visitors you usually host during 1 year?
Well, I'm not now present of actual figures, but it is several thousands, because besides the tours that are organized by a tourist organization, we also have tours that are organized through our royal court, and also there are tours when diplomats and foreign dignitaries came. So it is really a lot of people. And what also should be said about regular people and their visits is that they are very curious to see how royals live. What makes it really special for tourists is the fact that they are welcomed by their Royal Highnesses Crown Prince Alexander and Crown Princess Catherine when they come here, and their Highnesses use every opportunity they can to personally greet the visitors that come to the palace, and that guests are all the time very positively surprised when they see in direct contact how kind and down-to-earth regular people their Highnesses really are. And here in Royal Palace, they have a chance to personally meet Crown Prince Alexander, who is, as I said, the head of the entire Karađorđević royal family. And at the same time, he is also the descendant not only of Serbian kings, but also kings of Romania and Greece, with family connections, even with the most famous royal house in the world, and that is the royal family of Great Britain. There is a theory that every person needs 3 steps, 3 persons, 1 person to know and 2 others, so he can contact practically any person in the world. And in the case of Crown Prince Alexander, there is only 1 step. He can directly contact basically any important person in the world.
That's amazing. You must be lucky to work for their Royal Highnesses. What is that experience?
Well, it is really a privilege. It is a lot of work. I mean, I'm a person who consider myself really responsible. I don't want to take any chances in my work, but it is a great privilege. It is also, I'm lucky to hear the stories they have. I mean, they both have so much experience, have an amazing lives, met so many people, and it's always interesting. You always hear something new from their Royal Highnesses.
It must be a great inspiration for you, being
a
young expert in this field, to be able to be at the very, very focus of.
Of course, it is. At one moment, I was reading about King Peter II, and then at the other moment, I can hear it in person from his son. What were these historical events that occurred?
Excellent. We have another expert today. Perhaps you know of her. Her name is Tamara Ognjević. I will now give the floor to her. We were also very lucky to be able to host her. She's a director of Artist Center. She's a vice president of Nj.K.V Serbia. Tamara is highly respected art historian with whom I had the privilege to work and cooperate before on other occasions. In cooperation, of course, with Color Media Communications. And apart from her being very professional, I personally enjoy her extraordinary, exciting and inspiring storytelling about art and history. She's like a magician who can grab your attention and you really follow what she says. And I think she makes history of our royal family also very interesting and very captivating. Tamara, are you here with us? Can you hear us? Welcome.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for so many lovely and words. I would like to thank Color Media Communication for another very interesting and inspiring conference. And this is really a very good topic to talk about. And I was listening very carefully to all the participants. And as a museum and heritage professional, there are two lines we can differ in this conference. And I think this is very, very important and a very good way how to actually, because I'm, as you know, very active person, and I'd like to give suggestions and to counsel the authorities who have that kind of power to change things. So we followed two lines. One is the cultural diplomacy that is absolutely important. There's not enough words to explain how much it is important. And there is certainly no doubt that the royal families and aristocratic families do have that aura of celebrities with good contacts, the people who are renowned and well respected, within wider society and who can absolutely contribute not only to the better image of one country, but as well they can absolutely contribute to maintaining the communication with important people worldwide, which is, I think that we are very fortunate, as Mr. Parezanović stressed already, that the Crown Prince Aleksandar and his wife do have, on one side, of course, they are related to the number of royalties, still active royalties in Europe. And on the other side, they are, without doubt, that's my impression about what they do, actually do have what Mr. Jezol stressed earlier, an ability to be entrepreneurs and to communicate also important people when it comes to economy, and politics, etc., etc. Why I'm saying this? Because on the other side, we have the question about tourism, about economic effects and possibilities and potential of the royal palaces and residence to attract the people who will come and visit, and of course, that way support our economy. These are the two lines. As the heritage and museum professional, we also witnessed, the two levels of, let's say, maintaining the things. One thing is, as Mr. Kapri stressed, we are looking for the possibility for Albanian king to come back into his property, into his house. And we see that as a potential to attract, the different stakeholders, tourists included, etc., etc. And we, of course, have our Belgrade situation with residences at Dedinje, the royal residences at Dedinje, where we also see last 20 years the Crown Prince and his family are actually actively live, as we all live in our houses. On the other side, we had an example of Schönbrunn. I believe we're going to hear more from the colleagues in Italy. And we heard the Indian example where we actually have the stakeholders, the professionals carrying on these complexes as a museum and heritage sites, engaging all what is necessary that the system functions. Schönbrunn Group is actually a very good example. When I was doing my museum research, actually, they are a very good example because how to maintain things. We mentioned several times, it's beautiful to have palace. Belgrade, in its history, last 200 years, since 1830s, when Prince Miloš reluctantly moved his seat from Kragujevac to Belgrade, he wasn't very keen about the idea to be in Belgrade because the Turks were at the fortress practically till the 1867, and you could have seen from his first palace in Belgrade, which is at Kosančićev Venac, well known as Palace of Princess Ljubica, they could monitor the Turkish guards standing right next to the what we know as Assembly Church today, Assembly Church of Belgrade. It is a great effort to build the palace. It requires a lot of finances, but to maintain the complex, it requires even more finances. So in my humble opinion, it's essential. Nowadays, we have a situation, we know we have an old palace that is the seat of the mayor of Belgrade. We have the new palace that is the seat of the president of Republic of Serbia. Actually, these palaces were built for the royalties. Old palace was built by King Milan Obrenović for himself. But it's interesting to see the private and the public aspects of this, historical buildings. Because in between the old and the new palace was a very well-known old konak, the old palace, which was originally the house of the well merchant Simić that was acquired for the Prince Aleksandar. Prince Aleksandar is the father of the King Peter I and the grandfather of King Alexander I. Actually, for the needs of Prince Alexander, who became in power at the moment, and it was a very beautiful spot, and it was torn apart in 1904 after the coup d'etat, with an idea not to remind the people, the commoners, of what happened in that spot. Pity, because that particular palace remembers practically 70 years of both dynasties in power at the moment. Nowadays, we have a situation that the old palace of Princess Ljubica belongs to the Museum of City of Belgrade. Topčider's konak, also built by Prince Miloš Obrenović, is maintained by the Historical Museum of Serbia. As I mentioned, in the two existing palaces, already existing, old palace is the seat of the mayor, the new palace is the seat of the president. They have practically changed their function. Why do these people in actual, power, political power, do choose these objects? Because they are representative. They show the history. They show the tradition. And when King Alexander, after the World War I, came in power, he wanted, and we know that from his correspondence, for his new family, for his newborn son, then Crown Prince Peter, later Peter II, the king, he wanted his family to be separated from the political stage, and thus he decided to build Dedinje complex as practically a private residence. What is also fascinating about Dedinje complex is actually, it's not an easy story to say, but yet we have a situation that Serbia entered the World War I as Kingdom of Serbia, and when it came out from the World War I, we have the new state, a very, I would say, noble. We are discussing these days a lot. Was it a noble idea? It was a big pressure, but I do believe as an individual, it was a noble idea to form the new state and to introduce the same rights to the constitutive people of that state by King Alexander I. Thus, for a royal person, for the king, means the complete change of iconography, because king is an icon that represents all the values that are actually stated by his politics. What does it mean? A Serbian king, I have to say, perhaps our foreign colleagues do not know that, but the Serbia was the only country in then Europe, beginning of the 19th century, that actually has the national dynasty. The Greeks, the Bulgarians, Romanians, and others, they got their royalties coming mostly from Germany or Denmark, but Serbia was the one to create their own kings from the national leaders of the first and the second uprising. And that's essential. So King Alexander is deeply aware that he is Serbian, that he originates from Oplenac Topola, and he's stressing that as a value, especially in his mausoleum at Oplenac, where actually he connects his royal bloodline with heritage of medieval Serbian kings. And we can see the fresco, the founder portraits from old Serbian churches, you know, in that particular mausoleum, together with the portrait of the King Peter I, and of course of the Black George as the founder of the dynasty. On the other side, he had to show that he is truly Yugoslav king. And this is the royal compound at the Dedinje, especially the royal palace at Dedinje, is a fantastic example of these two elements interfering. Also, the King Alexander was the student of the Corpus page in St. Petersburg in Russia, and very well connected to the Russian imperial house. And thus, in the moment when the revolution in Russia took over, and when actually the Russian imperial family was exterminated in the most tragical and terrible manner, the number of Russian emigrants are coming to Yugoslavia because King Alexander is opening the door for them. According to my very esteemed professor of history of architecture, Aleksandar Kadijević, we had over 500 Russian architects at the moment in 1920s in Serbia. And of course, we are most aware of the famous architect Nikolai Krasnov because he was working for the King Alexander. And thus the royal compound had that touch of that aesthetic as well, because Alexander is a Slavic king, not to mention that after extermination of the Russian imperial family, he is the only Orthodox Christian king in then Europe. These are the moments which will determine the whole visual appearance of the symbols of that new state. We can see them best not in the palaces, but of course in the House of Parliament, which is now House of Parliament of Serbia, but primarily it was House of Parliament of then Kingdom of Yugoslavia. What is also interesting, that actually what is funny, and we may say, as the lawyers would say, it's contradictio ad iecto, it's a little bit, confusing, but when the World War II was over and the royal family prohibited to return back and their possessions, deprived by the state, actually Tito understood very well the representative power of the royal compound in Dedinje. What is interesting, he never lived there, but all the diplomats, all the, important meetings, etc., took a part in an interior which is everything but not communist, everything but not socialist. He particularly, and our ex-president Slobodan Milošević, they loved the Golden Salon, the name itself says how it looks like, which is the Louis XVI, furniture and lovely paintings and Poussin and all these things. So the representative power of these spaces is enormous. It, on one side, it shows, yes, we are the highly developed European society. Prince Paul, in the time when he was a regent of Yugoslavia after the tragic assassination of King Alexander in Marseille, was on the other side the one to contribute through his, because he was an Oxford scholar, and he was a big Anglophile and a big art connoisseur. A lot of people would like to say that he was an art historian. He wasn't. He was just art connoisseur with excellent connections with then authorities like Bernard Berenson in Italy or Kenneth Clark in England, who liked to introduce the light of European art in that space, and not only in that space. So the Serbia that started after 500 years of the Turkish occupation as a young state who tried through the dynasty of Obrenović and later on dynasty Karađorđević to catch this fast step of development of then industrial Europe, also tried via its dynasties actually to catch the rhythm of, representation of the European dynasties. With Karađorđević dynasty, yes, after the World War I, we got all these connections via marriage, which is in the history of royal houses an absolutely normal thing. And 70 years later, we are facing really an interesting question: cultural diplomacy or heritage, and from the museological aspect, protection, or perhaps why not together? But to have it together, in my opinion, and in my not so small experience, since we are a republic, we need the state to come to the cultural policy that will actually develop the strategy. What are we going to do? Because to have a palace is great, but to maintain a palace, to maintain the finances, because, for instance, just we are mentioning the royal compound in Dedinje. This is not the only spot. I would also like to say that we have a lovely complex by Obrenović in Plavinac next to Smederevo, which is also like Schönbrunn, started like a hunting house and was turned into the magnificent palace with vineyards. Yes, we want to open that for the audience. I'm the first one. I'm always for that these complexes should be open for the audience. But when the audience enter these complexes, we will need absolute action by restorers, conservers, curators, and of course, the entrepreneurs and the people who are capable, let's say blank, to make a money, because to have a palace, that is an expensive sport. This is just a short overview. I must say, as a Serbian, as an art historian, I'm very proud that we have this, especially what is lovely about Dedinje. Dedinje has its, I think, maybe I will make a mistake, it's 150 acres of parks. It's a botanical garden. It's an open museum space with the sculptures of some of the most prominent, sculptures from the in-between war Yugoslav period. But the question is, what are we going to do with it? Because I sincerely believe, I could only imagine, there's enormous pressure for His Royal Highness Crown Prince Aleksandar and his wife. Despite I know them, they're lovely people, and you can tell that that actually Karađorđević family is a people's royal family. With that, they're very hospitable. They would like to say hello to everybody, to exchange questions. It's very exhausting. It's very exhausting. It's a very big pressure. And it's very hard, to have open house where you live for the number of people passing. Thus, they really deserve my greatest respect when it comes to that. But I sincerely think that the state must be more active in finding, of course, in communication with all sides interested, the ideal way. Because when you have, for instance, colleague Yesol mentioned they have 1 million people. What does it mean from the micro system in the museum to have 1 million people in the space? That means you're going to have a restoration, you're going to paint your walls, you're going to have restore your paintings and objects of art yearly. Very expensive. Security, restoration, keeping everything all together. So it is a challenge, but I would say, for the end of this very long statement of mine, I love challenges, and this is not something that can't be overcome and resolved if they are the people who would like to talk about it and to work on it.
I remember something that you said. You can see on the faces and behavior of their Royal Highnesses that they are Karađorđević. Let's ask Uroš to join again. Uroš, can you share with us more information about royal family?
Of course. There are more things to be said. First, maybe to mention something about the potential of the royal compound for the future. We have a lot of ideas and plans for the future, but it is really hard to implement them. We have, for example, a small gift shop for the tourists where they can get a memorabilia of their visit to the royal complex, but we need to add more. We need to move forward. We have plans to create a private royal business club where representatives of prominent companies from Serbia and the world will gather, which would increase the potential of investments to Serbia and which would be a significant contribution to the country's economy. But there are unfortunately no funds available for this project at this time. I must say that when the Royal Highnesses came to Serbia 20 years ago, the state of the entire complex was really bad due to the years of it not being treated properly and maintained, and it needed much restorations. And although, as Ms. Zogenović very nicely noticed, the communist government and after that Milosevic's government afterwards were using it for their own needs, for their own representation, they did almost nothing to maintain and preserve the royal compound properly. Based on the promise that the royal complex and all other properties that were confiscated will be returned to them, Crown Prince Aleksandar and Crown Princess Catherine, and this is something that people in Serbia don't know, after their return to Serbia, sold all their private assets they have abroad and invested these funds into the repair and renovation of the compound to make it suitable and safe for visitors. They gave everything they had, and now it is hard to plan and move ahead when the wrongdoings from the past are still present and remain unresolved. And the palace is a home that really has a great potential. There are also plans to open a sort of small historical gallery, place where visitors could see items that belonged to the kings and queens of Karađorđević family, and which would make the tourist potential of this place even higher. But as already mentioned, since not a single item is returned to the royal family, many of them remain outside of the palace. And these items are not only of material, but what is even more important, of sentimental value, like greeting cards, pictures, and even drawings of King Peter, which were made by King Peter II when he was a child. So, but hopefully there will be a move forward that will make it easier not only to make plans, but also to put them into action, to implement them. As we see, there are plans to build a monument to King Alexander in Belgrade and to pay him the respect he deserves as a ruler who contributed a lot to our country, not only as a commander in war, but also as a great statesman, and to clear his name after decades of negative propaganda and lies. In light of that, it would be a proper thing to do that his wishes regarding his legacy for his family are also honored, and which would finally make it possible for the improvements we are talking about to be implemented. I mean, we should also mention, because it is not constantly, but very often mentioned in our media, about the budget that the royal family and royal palace receives from the state. The budget that the royal family receives is barely even enough for covering the costs of the maintenance of the royal compound. And there is a fact that for many years, when Crown Prince and Princess came to Serbia at the beginning of the 2000s, there was no budget at all. And that was the reason why their highnesses invested their private funds and everything they had into this compound to make it going, to move forward. The tourism revenue goes to the state, and as Crown Prince mentioned in his opening speech, the palace is mostly organizing the tours that are free of charge for the retired people, pensioners, and also for school children. And let's go back to the question that you have asked me at the beginning, how to bring this place to the younger generations. This is what Crown Prince does. He invites the schools, he invites the elementary and high schools to come here to organize tours and to have a chance for children to visit and to see this fairy tale in person. And once we were speaking about the connections that His Royal Highness has with other royal families, there is also a reference regarding all these problems that we have nowadays and that are inherited from the past. And we must say that in the countries that are republics nowadays, the best example of how there can be a just and compromise solution is the example of the royal family of Romania, also the relatives of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Alexander. Most of the properties that late King Michael inherited from his ancestors were returned to him. Romanian royal family also got the right to use one of the official state residences, and on the other hand, one of the properties that they got back, and that is Palace Peleš, they are renting it to the Romanian Ministry of Culture. So you can see it is obvious that when there is a will, a compromise solution can very well be found. And as can be seen from examples of royal families from other countries, once the question of property is resolved properly, they are able to contribute even more and provide even more to the country and to the people. And as Crown Prince already mentioned, all royal families are connected, and with these connections, they can and they are making bridges between nations to improve the life of the people. And just one more reference to this: when Crown Prince Alexander is fighting for justice regarding the assets of his family, it is not only because of his grandfather's wishes, but he is also advocating for human rights of all other people with the same issue, because right to private property is a part of every modern democratic constitution, and it's also basic human right. Crown Prince Alexander and Crown Princess Catherine have done so much for our country and our people, and they will continue working restlessly in the future. But it would be much easier for them if at least one or some of these long-lasting injustices could be finally resolved and corrected. And it would make it much easier for them to move forward with all the plans they have to give support to Serbia, and also with all the plans we have for this magnificent compound that we are speaking about. And in light of that and everything that was said, I would like to say only one more thing, and I know that Crown Princess Catherine will highly appreciate it. There are a lot of people in Serbia that need help and they need support. And I'm sure that there are people who are listening to this conference who are able and willing to support Crown Princes in helping the ones in need. So please visit www.lifelineaid.org and get more information how you can provide aid for Serbia and Serbian people. It will bring many smiles to many faces. And as Crown Princess usually has a way of saying when children ask her, "Princess, where is your crown?" She replies to them, "My crown is in my heart." And that is what being a royal is all about. It is not about being glamorous and all high and mighty. It is about caring for the people. And it is how all the rulers from Karađorđević family were in history, and how their heir, Crown Prince Alexander, and his wife, Crown Princess Catherine, are today. We must say, when we look at our history, we mostly look about the rulers from Karađorđević dynasty as warriors, as I already mentioned. We see them in trenches in the battlefield, but they were much more. Thank God, there are no more trenches, war trenches today. And I hope that Almighty will bless us that there will be none in the future. But there are trenches on a different battlefield for the better life, for a better standard of life of every citizens of Serbia. And so let us all find it in our hearts to contribute to the others, to the ones who need our help. Also, and this is my conclusion, for the information about all activities of the royal family Karađorđević, you can please visit our website. It was already mentioned, but I will mention it again. It is www.royalfamily.org. And for our Serbian visitors, it is very easy to remember the other version, www.dvor.rs. There you will find much data about the Karađorđević family and its history, but also the details how, once this awful pandemic is over, you can come to the royal complex, visit the palaces, and have a chance to feel this part of history today. And that is why there's a smile on my face. I'm enjoying every day here because I'm reliving the history that I was reading about. So thank you once again for the opportunity to speak at this conference, and hopefully we will meet each other at the Royal Complex in Belgrade.
Excuse me, as we would say in Serbian, vidimo se na dvoru.
Yes, vidimo se na dvoru, naravno.
Uroš, I really appreciate and admire your energy and your dedication. I wish, younger generations would also share this passion, and I wish all the success in the mentioned issues that you underlined during this conference to their Royal Highnesses, and companies like Core Media Communications always try to, using the communication channels, being them print or digital, to support the agenda that you have mentioned. I will just ask Tamara, thank you so much, and all the best. Stay healthy. I will just ask Tamara one final question. Tamara, we invite you to the conferences because as my colleagues now that are watching our conference say we always invite you because you speak in such a everyday language, but nothing simple and cheap in that adjective. Everyday language is, I think, something we need when we present our history. And I wish that, you know, history teachers in our elementary school, maybe not so much in the high school, but in the period when kids are being like, you know, like sponges, and when they take everything they hear, I wish they were more like you.
I have to tell you, there is a number of really brilliant high school and elementary school teachers. I know a number of them, and we are coming with the new generation of educator. And yet, everything is in the constant change, which is very important. And to understand history and to be able to, let's say, transfer that knowledge, it's very important not to be very academic, you know. For the new generations, both students, pupils, visitors, thanks to the social networking that we live in digital era, we live in era of television, of film, of media, they do not look into just learning the facts, but experiencing, if possible, that periods in history. So as a scientist and researcher, wherever I seek to research something, it is very important for me to understand the context, the time, the space, and of course, the way the people were thinking in that period. So it's not easy, especially, I mean, we live in Balkans, and it's not easy, you know, to transfer the knowledge about history and heritage without, you know, facing the conflict history, the conflict situations. So it's very important for to help younger generations, and they like to play, they like to participate, not just them, the whole new generation of visitors, they want to participate. And in my opinion, it's very important to let them participate, you know, to let them, you know, see the things, try to things, to simulate experience for them if it is possible. But I would like to make a sort of a conclusion, because I mentioned in this conference, we have two very important moments. Cultural diplomacy, oh yes, 1000% yes, even if it is not mathematically logical, you know. And of course, museology, heritology, you know, historical houses. I insist on the ICOM, as International Council of Museum, has a special international committee, which name is DEMHIST. It's a committee for the historical houses, historical places. I think it's very important that we have better international contacts in that terms when it comes, you know, to promotion, exploitation of what is a royal heritage of Serbia on all levels. For instance, museum in Gornji Milanovac is doing magnificent job with collecting of objects belonging to Obrenović family that we also do not know enough about. It's very important to have that kind of communication, to exchange that experience. That can help a lot. And I'm especially happy that actually I can't say anymore our new Minister of Culture, because she's there 3 or 4 months yet, is very eager to open and discuss these problems. Finally, we got the new law on museums, which is the first ever in history of Serbia. I sincerely hope that we are going to you know, update the law on culture, and that we are going to sit both professionals and all interested sides. When I say that, I mean the royal family too, and to discuss and to see how we can actually, you know, absolutely assist this process, push this process forward, and change it for the better. I think that's our common interest. That's my opinion. I don't have to be right, but I sincerely believe in that. And once again, thanks a lot for the lot of lovely words and the possibility to join this fabulous, you know, team of, you know, experts. It's really my honor. Thank you very much.
Just a moment of spontaneous thing. Let's have a photo that we can share on social media so everybody can switch on the cameras. And I'm happy that our experts from Italy are with us. So maybe, I don't know if our guest from, I know that our guest from Albania needed to leave because he was on the way to a meeting. I don't know if our guest from India is still online. Mr. Yassel, are you here? If not, we will just have a photo for our social media. Just give me a second. I'm doing this right away. Everybody smile. Thank you so much. Tamara, thank you. Uroš, thank you. It was a great pleasure to be in this direct communication with you. It's always nice with presentations, but like, you know, discussion kind of format gives you a possibility to make comments and to react immediately. So thank you thanks to everybody who participated so far. We are in the final part of our conference, and as we always say, last but not least, a special treat, so to say, at the end of today's conference. We greet together and welcome two great speakers, Mr. Andrea Merlotti. He is director of the Research Center of the Savoy Court in Turin, in Italy, and Mrs. Elena Alliaudi. She is coordinator of a network of European royal residencies. So I'm sure you agree with me that this is definitely the special treat for the end. And our audience will will have the exclusive opportunity to enjoy the view of the spectacular building that is visible right now. I think these two professionals are reporting live now. Good afternoon already, 6 minutes past noon. How are you doing? Are you with us? Mr. Merlotti, Mrs. Elena?
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Tell us about the background. Where do you report live from? Welcome to Belgrade.
I'm very lucky too today because we are hosted in this great gallery of La Venaria Reale. So it's one of the Italian royal residences in Italy, and specifically in Turin. And La Venaria Reale has a research center which is very specialized in European courts. So Mr. Merlotti is the director of this center. I guess she has something to tell us about this kind of relationship.
No, well, not wait. Good morning, Mr. Merlotti. You can start your presentation.
I'm very happy to have you in this magnificent gallery. This is one of the masterpieces of the Italian Barocco, and one of the masterpieces of the architectural of the Italian court in the 18th century. I'm not very confident on my English, and for this reason I have prepared a speech that I go to read. And for this speech, I have the necessity to share some image.
Of course, feel free.
Perfect. No, just a moment. No, sorry.
Yes.
Just a moment. I try to.
If you press F5 on your keyboard, the screen will be like a full screen, and then we'll be able to see.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Good morning. As I said, I speak to you from the Royal Palace of Venaria, near Turin in Italy. This castle was built between the 17th and the 18th centuries for the House of Savoy, and this is one of the different residences of the House of Savoy around Turin. Here we are in the great gallery designed by Filippo Juvar, one of the greatest Italian architects of the 18th century. In this space, the Sabaudian sovereigns received ambassadors and visitors from all over Europe, in some cases even other kings. But today, the gallery is populated by tourists. But often, it hosts important international meetings. I remember here with this photo, the meeting of European Minister of Culture in 2014, and the G7 meeting, sorry, I have a problem with the image. No.
It's working now, it's great.
Sorry. Just a moment. Sì, perfetto. Ancora una. This is the image of the G7 Labor and Employment Ministerial meeting in 2017. As you can see, Venaria is today one of the most important royal residences in Italy. We have normally, before the COVID, 1 million circa of visitors every year, and we hope after the COVID we return to have this number of visitors. Well, I chose to opening my speech with an image of the Quirinale Palace. Why don't move? I chose to open the historical part of my speech with the image of the Quirinale Palace. Today, the Quirinale is the seat of the President of the Italian Republic, but in the past centuries, it was the royal palace of the Pope, first and after, for a short time, of the kings of Italy. Like all the other European royal palaces, also the Quirinal accommodated what is known today as the Sala Regia, a king's room. It was a hall where the sovereign seated on his throne received other sovereigns that, however, rarely happened, and above all, the ambassador who had been sent to this court. For this reason, the Sala Regia had to be decorated in a way that somehow suggested to these illustrious guests the importance of the court they had been sent to. We must keep in mind, in fact, that the arrival of an ambassador at the foreign court was considered a major public event. The importance of this event was such that several painters depicted them in remarkable artworks. For example, a famous painting by Canaletto illustrates the arrival of the French ambassador at the Doge's Palace in Venice. As for Rome, one of the best examples in this painting from the early 18th century depicting the arrival of the Venetian ambassador Duodo at the Quirinale. The ambassador arrived at the palace with a long procession of carriages that escorted him from the city gate to the royal palace through a cheering crowd. Upon his arrival at the Quirinal, the ambassador was greeted by Pope in the Sala Regia, the king's room. This is where he could admire the decoration that bore, obviously, a clear political significance. In this regard, it is important to note that that all European royal palaces are like stone books. The sovereign who inhabited them used decoration to convey the historical foundation of their power. In the political culture of the Ancien regime, antiquity was very important. In order to be recognized as the most outstanding political figures, sovereigns had to show that they had been exercising their power for a long time, that their dynasty, their houses were very ancient or very rich, and that for centuries they have had a high rank. To this end, sovereigns used images taken from both their family history, such as battles won, notable marriages, etc., and metaphors drawn from literature and mythology. When Cosimo de' Medici, for example, commissioned painter Francesco Salviati a fresco for Palazzo Vecchio, which depicted the liberation of Rome from the Gauls, he alluded to the liberation of Florence by his army, the army of Cosimo, against the Republican armies. All court artworks, such frescoes or paintings that we admire in all European palaces, was propaganda. As Orwell said, all art is propaganda. Without grasping their political message, the royal palaces across Europe are incomprehensible. They should be seen as space of power, where the power of every sovereign and every royal household conveyed and justified by the cause of the art and magnificent. All the art in the royal palace is a manifestation of propaganda for justifying the power of the king, of the pope. There were too many audience for the sovereign message, the court and the ambassador. So what did the ambassador who arrived in Rome see at the Quirinale? They saw their colleagues. Pope Paul V, for example, ordered that in Sala Regia they be painted some important embassies they had received during his pontificate, from Congo, from Persia, and from Japan. This is the portrait. We have seen the portrait of the first Japanese ambassador in Europe and the first ambassador from Congo and from Persia in Rome. This helped to understand why the model of the Sala Regia of the Quirinale served as an example for similar architectures built in the royal palaces for kings all over Europe. The most famous example was the ambassador staircase, l'escalier des ambassadeurs, of the Chateau de Versailles, which unfortunately has been lost. Taking inspiration from Quirinale, Louis XIV wanted the walls of the ambassador staircase to be painted with characters from all over the world, witnessing the arrival of diplomats. But there is an important difference. He ordered that they should not be real ambassador received from the king at the Palace of Versailles. He asked the painter, Charles Lebrun, to depict people from the four continents known at the time, as if the entire world is gathered in Versailles to glorify the King of France. The King of France was called not only the King's son, but also Le Roi Monde, the King World. As you can see, the message conveyed in the two halls, Rome and Versailles, was only apparently similar. At Quirinale, the Pope wanted to show how friendly he used to welcome in his palace the embassy of sovereign from all over the world. At Versailles, different, the King of France wanted to tell his subject and guest that the entire world came to admire the splendor of his kingdom. Beside this noticeable difference, both halls, the Sala Regia in Quirinale and the Escalier of Ambassadeurs in Versailles, clearly demonstrate the importance of a diplomatic function for the European royal palaces. The diplomatic role of the royal palaces is an important element for understanding the royal house in all the Europe. And this element, the diplomatic role, survived also the fall of the royal houses that built them. Exemplary, once again, the case of Versailles. When the King of France received other sovereigns, such as the Doge of Genoa, the Duke of Genoa, or prominent ambassador, he used the Hall of Mirrors, the Galerie de Glace, the most impressive and sumptuous space of the castle. It's meaningful that between 1990 and 1921, most of the treaties that marked the end of royal courts in Europe, or at least the beginning of this end, were negotiated and ratified in the royal palaces. The Treaty of Versailles, the most renowned one, was signed by diplomats from all over the world in the Hall of Mirrors, as seen in the famous artwork by English painter William Orphan. Although the treaty marked the end of many European monarchies and dynasties that reigned in Europe for centuries, only royal palaces seemed a suitable location for such an event. Turning now from the past to the present of our continent, it is important to note that precisely because the European royal palaces have a clearly political meaning, they are a valuable resource today in the current phase of the history of our continent. It's now clear, in fact, that the shaping of a European political identity cannot take place without the coordinated definition of a European cultural heritage. This has been an underlying issue throughout the entire process of building European unity. The European Cultural Convention, for example, of 1945, for example, also referred to a patrimoine culturel commun to be protected and developed. In those same years, Robert Schuman, one of the fathers of European unification, said that Europe must be a cultural community in the most elevated sense of the term. Only in 1992, in the Maastricht Treaty, was made explicitly the need to define a cultural heritage of European significance. It is evident today that Europe, today and in the next years, will have to face the challenge of defining this cultural heritage of European significance. I think that our European royal palaces, in Italy, like in Serbia, like in England, like in Russia, in all Europe, can be an important European identity of this kind. Our palaces, these palaces, show well that the history of the house of the European dynasty is like a skeleton that supports the wall of European history. The history of the royal houses is not an history of the past, but an history very, very live, also in the present, and also in the present of the place of the state that are not more a monarchy. For the reason, as I said before, the history of royal palaces and the history of the European dynasty represent a strong European identity for the present. For centuries, a political, artistic, architectural, literary, and musical culture had been defined, shaped, spread in their courts, which delineate as one of the continent's identifying features. The courts acted as a solid network that spanned from Portugal to Russia, from Scotland to Italy, representing the diffuse beating heart of European civilization at its peak. Since 2001, the Royal Palace of Europe, a great part of the Royal Palace of Europe, have gathered into the Association of Royal Residences of Europe, the ARRE, of which speak my colleague and friend Elena Alliaudi, which includes a lot of palaces such as Ahuda, the Kremlin, Versailles, Veneria. The network has become an important hub and a think tank to discuss and express through our exhibition and events, but that what is considered a great European heritage and shared identity. In 2001, the European Commissioner for Culture, Viviane Reding from Luxembourg, noted that for us Europeans, culture cannot be limited to the concept of entertainment that has become popular in America and United States. For Europeans, it's rated the Royal House is the vital expression of a common sense of belonging. Royal Palace throughout Europe offer extraordinary possibility for a common identity. I am confident that in the next few years, much will be done in this regard from every one of us. So that also in the future, the Royal Palace, a century-old history, will keep playing an important role, not only for the present, but for the future of our continent. And about this, I go the speech to Elena Alliaudi.
Yes, thank you so much for a lot of information and for the passionate support for the role of these amazing spaces, which are from past, but they have a strong connection to future, as you say to us. Mrs. Elena, you are the coordinator of a network of European royal residences. Can you tell the audience what the organization is all about and what are you currently working on?
Yes, so thank you again for hosting this interesting conference. Actually, yes, I guess we heard a lot about how these palaces were connected in the past. And I would like to explain you a little bit how these palaces are still connected today, this through the network of the European Royal Residences. So I'm the coordinator of that network. I'm usually based at the Palace of Versailles, but today I have the chance to be here in this wonderful, great gallery, as we said before, of La Venaria Reale, which is with Schönbrunn, that we saw also before, one of the members of the network with many others. In fact, this network was founded by the Palace of Versailles 20 years ago. And today it gathers the most important palaces, museum palaces in Europe. So in 15 countries, from south to north, from east to west, basically from Italy to Sweden and from Portugal to Russia, we cover all the European states, well, most of all. And of course, these palaces today are open to the public. So in fact, in 2019, together, all these palaces, they welcomed more than 43 million visitors, which means that they are a very important actor for tourism, as we said before, and they can play a major role for the promotion of the cultural identity, as Mr. Merlotti said. So, of course, these palaces today, they embody the history of Europe. They are the keepers of this historical and cultural legacy. Of course, they maintain the rich and diverse heritage, and they are a way to share knowledge. But above all, the most important element that they have in common is the fact that, of course, they were, and in this case they still are, in some cases they still are, royal residences. Actually, we have within the network, some members that manage royal palaces that are still in use, like for example in Denmark or Monaco or Sweden, Spain, exactly. So for the network, the royal residence is conceived as a whole. So taking into account the interaction between the building, the collection, and the landscape. And this differs, so it's very different from a traditional museum, where here I mean a traditional museum, a building which was specially conceived to display artworks. And of course, they were lieu de prestige, as we said in French, so they were places of representation and power, of course. Today they are open to the public. They offer a very different cultural offer, so different activities for their members, their visitors, and these kind of activities that are connecting so the past with the future, they raise a very big range of issues, of course, in the field of conservation or restoration, but also promotion, education, and so on and so on. So this is the real core of the need of the network, which is basically addressed to the employees that work in that royal residences. We estimate that we have at least 10,000 employees, so it's a very great entity. And of course, as it was in the past, today the royal residences gathers together a very extremely varied profile of professionals, because we have, of course, historians and curators, but in a royal residence we also have gardeners, plumbers, restorers, educators, administrators. So it's a very, very different range of works that cohabitate in the same institution. So this is the very first starting point of the network. So the idea to recognize this, to be aware of this unicity and the need to stand together to face the same challenges. I will be very, very briefly, but I would say that so through this network, of course, as we see, there are strong relationships and connections till today. The leaders of that network, of these palaces, through the network, they meet several times a year. We saw actually Mr. Van Holter before. We always gather together all the directors of the royal residency during the General Assembly. That is the major event of the network. It's held once a year, and it allows the leaders of these palaces to meet and to share their experiences. I think it's important that to say that also in that kind of event, there are a lot of connections that are done. For example, our last General Assembly was held in the Palace of Monaco at the presence of Prince Albert de Monaco. I also have some picture for you.
Yes.
Just a moment, please. We have a little problem.
No, it's okay. But today, just to say that, of course, cultural, it's very related to the cultural diplomacy, because royal palaces today, this is a picture, for example, of our last General Assembly in the Palace of Monaco, with a reception with Prince Albert de Monaco. So, as you can see,
I'm not sure if we can see it. Can I ask my technical team to confirm? Can we see the photo that our Elena is sharing right now from the network of European royal residencies? Can we see it on the screen? No. Maybe share screen button somewhere down in the last horizontal line.
okay, here we are.
Just a moment. We have a little problem.
And now we're on.
Sorry, we have a little
Yeah, it's okay. It happens. It's a live broadcast. It can happen, you know, everything can happen.
And the place is wonderful, but it's not easy to broadcast from here, of course.
Yes, but I use this opportunity to thank you because you joined from the actual space live. So thank you for that effort. We can see the perspective of this very, very big palace. So thank you for sharing this experience with us. The sound is a little bit far away. I mean, we are trying to hear it, but the perspective is amazing. So can you double click on this image to enlarge it?
Maybe I try to put my microphone even better.
We can hear. It's just a little bit like from a little bit far away. That is our impression. I don't know if my team also hears this way. but we have heard a lot of great information, and I now feel sorry that Uroš Parezanović, the researcher of history of Royal Palace in Belgrade, is not actually here with us anymore. He is excused himself, he needed to leave, but I wanted to ask him if our royal court is member of your network. Elena, do you know this? Do you have the information?
Sorry, can you repeat? I'm very sorry.
Is our royal court like member of the network of European royal residencies?
No, actually, we have 13 members managing more than 100 palaces, but unfortunately, we still not have any Serbian members. So the network is ready to grow.
What do they have to do to become members?
Actually, we have in our website, I will show you later, there's just a form, and then the decision will be made by the GA. The next GA will be held in Naples, the Royal Palace of Naples, in September. So it's a collective decision of the GA. So I would like to show you some picture of the...
Oh, we see them, yes. Where was this photo taken, the last one that you show? I think I recognize even some colleagues from Schönbrunn.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And this picture, I don't know if you're seeing the same one, because I guess we had some technical problem, but the Monaco meeting was held at the Museo Oceanographique, so the Oceanographic Museum, and at the palace in 2 locations. So we have here members from Russia, from Peterhof, from the Kremlin, of course, Versailles, Denmark, Schönbrunn, Italy, Germany. So yes, it's a very European network.
Smiling faces, not wearing masks. This is nice of you. This is nice of you.
Yeah.
Would you like to send some final message, both you and Mr. Merlotti?
Yeah, I just to brief explain you the functioning of the network, because I spoke a lot about a royal residence, but why these museums choose to stay together today is to share their experience, and we do that through conferences. So of course now with COVID it's a little bit more difficult, but normally we organize 5 or 6 technical meetings, what we call technical meetings, during the year, and the idea is to focus on very technical issues that has to face people working in these palaces. For example, just to give you an example, we went last year in Russia to discover the secrets of the hydraulic system of the fountains of Peterhof. So we gathered together all the plumbers of the European royal residences, and then we went to Portugal to understand how to better conserve mechanical objects. So with an expert of historical clocks, or for example, we discussed how to use the virtual reality to explain public, so visitors, to rebuild a palace that is empty today. So as you see, the range of subject is very, very big, and we are very glad to make this connection between palaces, because I guess that people learn a lot from each other, actually, as it was in the past with the European courts and the exchange of artists. We also offer the possibility of the members of the network to make mobility grants, a little bit like the Erasmus program, but for workers. So I guess it's very important to go away to discuss with older colleagues the same issue. And coming back just to diplomacy, I just mentioned, and because I think it's very meaningful, that one of the last meeting that we organized as a network at the Palace of Versailles was the closing meeting of the European Year of Cultural Heritage, which was an initiative of the European Parliament and the European Commission. And the closing dinner was organized at the Palace of Versailles, and it was gathering together all the major institutions about heritage in Europe, and it was placed under the patronage of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Jean-Yves Le Drian, which means that, of course, culture is still very connected to politics. And in that case, of course, it was a very institutional and cultural diplomacy. It was an event on that feeling. So I don't know if I try to explain very, very briefly, but maybe there are some questions from participants.
Let's check with my team. You can, in the meantime, stop sharing your screen. Tamara Ognjević, she's the art historian. She is one of those who is still online with us. She's a great contact. Maybe you can exchange, information about what each and everyone does. Let me check with my team. Do we have some questions from the audience? Maybe not.
I have a question.
Yes,
if I may.
Tamara, please.
Hello, buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
I just also recognized two Russian colleagues from Peterhof on your previous photography. But what I wanted to ask you is actually the network of the European residences. The most of these residences are museums, aren't they?
The most are museums, of course. Actually, one of the criteria to be part of the network is be open to the public. So having a dynamic approach with the public. So of course, there are all museums open to the public. Sometimes there are museums that are not open every time of the year, like for example, Monaco, because it's really used for institutional acts.
Yeah, that was very important because today, as you probably noticed, we were talking about royal residences that are inhabited by the members of the royal families and those who are museums. And I'm sorry that I have to be boring, but there is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Enormous. And you know that.
Yes.
You know that.
This is exactly that reason. And I was very interested about your speech before, because I get to really stress that point of the unicity of a royal residence, which is a cohabitation of a lot of different aspects. Then, of course, there are some museums that are completely museums, like Versailles today, or Venaria here, and museums like Madrid, for example, the Royal Palace of Madrid, which is both, because it's a museum open to the public almost the time, but it closed its doors during the official events of the king. So he has these two aspects together. So the idea is just that a royal residence being itself the building and a piece of art and the collection inside. So it's different from a museum where artworks are displayed in special places designed for that. So this
of course, but what I wanted to say actually that the when we say museum, it necessarily doesn't mean that it is in a static form, just that it requires the professionals and staff that can actually maintain the whole asset. This was my point, you know.
Yeah, but I understand. I guess actually we work a lot in the network, but also in other residences on preventive conservation, for example, which is one of the major issues of a royal residence as a historic houses, because of course it's a building that is built not to host so many people as we are doing today. So all these kind of issues are very specific for this kind of site. I do not see that it's completely different from a museum, no, but I would like to stress that point, that actually there are places that was not built to be museums. So today there are a lot of challenges, even the way how people go through the palace with furniture, with a full room. So this is a little bit the challenge of the professional working in this museum.
Thank you very much. This was my point, you know. On one side, we all live in republics. So the royalties in our countries do not have anymore that kind of power, you know, or finances to do it as they would do in the 19th century. Yeah. So it's really, as I already said, it's very expensive, demanding, expert demanding job. Thank you and have a great day. That's a lovely view. You know what we say, what I used to say, I don't need the therapy of COVID, I need a trip to Italy. Thank you very much.
A trip to beauty.
Absolutely.
Trip to Italy would definitely solve many now chronicle problems that we all have after a year and a half being told to stay at home. Elena, we see some people passing by in the background.
Yeah.
Are colleagues or visitors?
I'd like to tell you, this is the first day of opening in Italy. So we must celebrate that.
Congratulations. Thumbs up, definitely. Like high five, because we hope that every day will be better and better when it comes to number of visitors. And thank you for showcasing or exposing this part of your working place, Palace of Venaria. This is a former royal residence, and it is like 80,000 square meter long, and it's the biggest, one of the largest in the world. So hopefully people who cooperate with Northern Italy and Italian and Serbian economy is very much connected. I don't know if you know about that. So many people cooperate with you, and there are 2 or 3 chambers of commerce of Italy and Confindustria here in Belgrade. So hopefully these trade connections will be established soon. And the magazine I cooperate with, it's monthly in English, called Diplomacy and Commerce. Now, in the coming month, is going to have a special issue dedicated to Italy because of your National Day, 2nd of June. So we have strong connections, and now we have even more, 2 more people that we can cooperate with in Italy. So this is a great pleasure having you both, and thank you for everything you shared with us. We have all been a part of this virtual journey back in time and behind the walls and gates of some of the world's European most fascinating royal palaces and villas. It was a pleasure hosting both of you. And all other participants. We started at 10 a.m. today. This conference was hopefully another opportunity for Serbia to see the best practices and to hear the advices and guidelines on how to protect and use our cultural and historical heritage. And we are happy that our minister, Madam Maja Gojković, Minister of Culture and Information, is a strong supporter of that. Once more, I greet everybody on behalf of the organizer, the Color Media Communications, and I'm grateful for everybody's attention. Have a nice day, stay healthy, and looking forward to host another interesting conference like this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Grazie.
Buona giornata.
Buona giornata.
Grazie, bye.